Hello and welcome. This is MouseGunner, and we're back with some more Factorio with Row-Type. And we are picking up back where we left off, trying to finish off the green science, and it looks like we're really close to doing that now.
Yep, so in between episodes, we just kind of cleaned up and got the actual materials in here and power. So you'll see we can talk about or recap the sidedness of the belt here, right here, where the green science starts. You'll see because this transport belt factory outputs onto this belt with this one inserter and there's no other source. As I said before, the inserter always puts onto the far side of the belt, which in this case is on the left. So you see the transport belts only ever stack up on the left. Now, you don't want to mix your belts because then, in a similar situation we have here, you have a ton of transport belts, and if you mixed your belt, you would have an entire belt full of transport belt and no room on the belt for the inserters to go on. So we do this half and half kind of deal where using this T-junction here, we ensure that the inserters come in and are always on the right side of the belt. That way, the right side can stack up or not as it needs to with inserters. The left side can stack up or not as it needs to with belt. And you kind of keep the items separated so all the machines can get what they need.
Just as a reminder, I did this in a previous episode where I locked certain things to my toolbar. Remind me how I do that.
So that is a middle mouse click on the item. So you put an item there, you middle mouse click. And the nice thing about that is as you probably know, if you have nothing there, you can also, if you open up your inventory and control left click on an empty space, it will fill things in, and it will fill in your preset locations first. And I don't actually know the priority for your empty toolbar spots. So for example, I just did it where I have a couple preset spaces and then the right half of my toolbar is just completely empty. When I control left click in my inventory, it fills it with steel chest, long-handed inserters, assembling machines, and raw stone. Why it picks those things, I don't know, but it's mostly useful for filling out your reserved slots because every once in a while you can have some of those materials in your inventory, but not on your toolbar. It's kind of rare, but it's a useful trick to know.
All right, so how many of these are we planning on doing, these labs? Just continue going on up?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real number. Basically, it's hard to do lab ratios because most of your science has different requirements. So I'm looking at the science option now, and you can see the advanced material processing, the one we're working on right now, if we had green, requires one of each red and green science and 30 seconds times 75. So that's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. But you can look at some of these others. Let's see if I can find one. And of course, I can't find one at this time, but there are some other research options that have uneven requirements and different amounts of time. So it's always hard to do kind of like a ratio of science production to science consumption because science consumption just varies. Anyway, that's a long way of saying you basically just put down a bunch of labs, and if science is moving too slowly for your preference, then you put down more labs. That's the long and short of it.
All right. But we also need red science, which...
Yep, which I'm just kind of fixing here. I noticed we have the gears, again, on this inside part of the belt, the right side of the belt. And the only other thing these red science is lacking is copper plate. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring some up here. And you'll notice we talked about last time my style of underground belt, just kind of this immediate connection. Again, not necessarily a right or wrong way, just easier for my brain. And with that, once this gets up here, we should have red science flowing. And once we power the science labs, we'll have science pretty well automated for quite a ways longer into the game, which will be nice.
Now, out of curiosity, you have the red science and the green science coming out on the same belt. Is that on purpose?
Yes, because I've pretty much never had a problem where the belt can't hold enough science. theoretically, you can imagine a belt can only hold so many materials per second, basically, because it's a transport, right, per second. In theory, if you're doing science so fast, you can't fit enough science on the belt because it's being consumed. I've never even gotten close to that, even with this level 1 yellow belt. So I just put them both on the same belt. And actually, now that I think about it, I spent all this time talking about being prepared for the next level, the next thing. We will need 2 more sciences. And so that's what I'll put the second belt, which is not going to be filled now, but eventually we'll have not green, we'll have blue science and purple science. So as you can imagine, each belt can only really hold 2 items, at least in this segregated manner. So it's simple enough to just expand this a little bit and run the other labs over here. I conveniently have a couple long-handed inserters, and you just grab them like this. This way you leave yourself some space for in the future when you're going to need that extra input belt for the other products.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, so you can imagine this one is red, green. The next one will be blue, purple. And at least as of right now, the 0.14 release that we're operating in, there are no other types of beakers, science, what are they actually? Science packs, that's what they call them. That may change in the future, but
the thing I wasn't aware of, because I guess I've never really gotten this far in the game, is that the labs can run both red and green beakers at the same time, apparently.
Yeah, so basically what happens is whatever research you've chosen, so for example, again, we're using advanced material processing as the picked research right now, that requires red and green. And they will just pick up what they need. If we go back to one, if the next thing we pick after this is done only requires red, then they'll just pick up red and the green will sit on the belt. So they'll just pick up exactly whatever they need for whatever research is selected. So let's see, so again, this is a case you were just talking about how many labs do we need. I'm looking at the science progress and it feels slow to me. There's really no reason that it should be slow. It's fine, but I guess compared to what I'm used to running, this feels slow, so I'm tempted to build more. Again, it's all down to personal preference and I guess space management at some point, but this is just a good example of at least the way I play, my play style. More labs. One thing I'm also doing over here is adding or switching to fast inserters on some of our science production materials because I'm noticing, let's see, actually, let me go back to regular inserters so I can kind of show you what happens here. So if you open up this gear machine that I'm kind of like running in circles around right now.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so open up this one. You'll notice if you hover your mouse over the iron gear wheel, kind of at the end of the progress bar, you'll see that it has a red highlighting on 1 out of 2, 0 out of 2 iron plate. And you'll also notice that the progress bar kind of goes and stops, like goes and stops. That's basically telling you that it's not getting enough material. That iron plate is red because it's not getting it fast enough. And that's because it needs 2 iron plate in half of a second. Now, I don't remember all the math, and there are definitely certain people that will be able to tell you exactly, all of the math. If I remember correctly, and we can take a look at some of these, I think it takes an entire second for a regular inserter to complete a rotation, and it takes half a second for a fast inserter. Again, don't quote me because that may or may not be correct. But you can at least tell once you open up that gear machine, it's running a little bit better right now because it's getting the iron plate it needs faster. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Now, out of curiosity, not that we're going to do this, but if you had run this belt up just one more space so that these inserters were, well, you rotated them and all that, but were pulling from this belt and there were 2 per assembly machine, let's say, would that double as well the speed that they're getting the supplies?
Yeah, so another thing you'll see people do, I'll go ahead and show you, we'll move the power pole out of the way. You could do this and then put another one here. And you'll notice that both the top and the bottom inserters are grabbing the iron plate. And so that will work Again, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but you can almost think of the inserters as having like a crafting speed, or a unit speed, the same as the actual production machines do. So if you add another inserter, you get that much more speed in adding the material. And we'll go ahead and clear this queue for now. Another thing we can notice, and you can kind of see this watching the inserters, it takes kind of a practiced eye to notice this, but the inserters sometimes look like they're acting a little bit kind of wonky. And again, this is hard to tell. You got to be kind of used to what the animation looks like to know that it doesn't look. This one, I think over here, you look, it just kind of looks a little sluggish. It's like it's kind of stretching out in a weird way. It's a little hard to explain, but if you hover your mouse over it, and on the right, you'll look at the electricity bar and see how it's kind of fluctuating. That is what's causing this weird animation. That's kind of like the low power animation state. And again, it's kind of hard to tell unless you're used to looking at them. And see, now everything stops, so it has full electricity, but it's a good way of noticing that we're having some electricity problems. Another good way to see, and a way to check kind of in general, is hover over any electric pole, and you'll get that same kind of electricity bar. And you can see it's not all the way. It's just kind of like fluctuating around. So you see that, and everything's just going to run slower. All your machines are going to run slower. All your inserters are going to run slower. Everything that requires electricity is only going to operate at whatever percentage of electricity that it gets. As far as I know,
what you're saying is we don't have enough power.
That's exactly, yeah. Okay. My very long-winded explanation. Basically, yeah, we need more steam engines, boilers, etc. The whole thing. So I'm going to make.
So we might as well double it up, I would assume, right?
Yep, that's generally how I operate. I just made, or I am making 10 steam engines in my pocket. We'll need to go ahead and make I don't remember if we went with 13 or 14 boilers, but another row of boilers, another offshore pump, etc. The whole thing. Like you said, just double it up.
All right, I'm going to do 13, but I'll count up, I guess, what we've got, and we'll go off of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost easier to just kind of line them up directly next to them, although you can sometimes run into these situations where your pump doesn't fit in the exact same place, and it skews the whole column off by one, and you can imagine some people don't care at all, and you can also imagine that it really bothers me.
Now, the question I have is, can you go off of the same water? Is it pump? What is the exact?
Yeah, so this offshore pump, the thing that actually goes into the water, you would diminish your basically your efficiency. The pump provides 10 water. And, what unit that is, I don't know. You can hover over it and you see on the right it says 9.9 water. And it just so happens that the steam engines consume water at a rate that one pump can run 10 steam engines at full efficiency. And if you add more steam engines without adding another pump, you start to run into this issue where you don't have enough water to run your steam engines. Now, the water physics in this game are a little bit difficult. I mean, they're not necessarily intuitive, but that's why a lot of people just kind of remember I need to double everything. I need another pump. I need 14 more boilers and 10 steam engines. You just kind of remember that ratio and you build it again.
Now, this seems like an odd question, but can you do underground belts underwater?
Yes, you can. So, for example, yeah, you could do, they have to reach, obviously, but you could do, they don't quite reach. I'm trying to see if I can find, there we go, those will connect.
Oh, cool.
So if I just kind of, for show, and you'll see up here, this will come out in a moment. There we go. See? So yeah, if you can reach, they'll work. Clean this up. Now, a common
go with that. Oh, come on.
Well, so I guess that leads me into the next thing I was going to talk about is, obviously there are different ways of doing this. You could imagine kind of splitting off and then just running coal, another one down this way. In general, what I like to do is come up with a way to, and actually what I might do to enable this, I'll just go ahead and do this quickly before we can talk about it. There we go. So I'll run this down this way. Now what I'm going to try and do is bring them just like this. And I tend to do kind of this snake pattern, but even more than snake pattern, it's pass all of the boilers and then go to the next set of boilers. That way, at least in my head, it's a lot easier to see what's going on with the fuel situation. If you have kind of a split, I don't know. I guess I never really thought about why I do it this way, but it seems a lot easier to just look at one line of coal. And if that line of coal is unsaturated or undersaturated, you can quickly and easily look at it instead of kind of tracing back to a split and trying to see, oh, is it getting split here? And is one column getting enough fuel, but the other column is not? It's much easier, again, at least for me, and this is not by no means the absolute correct way to do it, but for me, it's a lot easier to just kind of keep snaking this one line around. That way you only have to look one place to look at your fuel situation.
That makes sense to me.
So let's see. And while we're here, again, I'm going to kind of come down here. And obviously, since fuel is like the crux of everything, right? If we lose power, everything else just shuts down. While I'm here, I'm just going to make a few more miners and just put them down, because I, in general, like to see this line, if not entirely saturated, almost entirely saturated at all times. And we talked about this before, to save just kind of running around, run all the way back to this area. While I'm here, just going to do it. It's a lot easier to just kind of add up and not come back until later. And with this, hopefully, we won't have to worry about power for a little while. Although, we are kind of getting close to the point where, once you start building the bus, you can sometimes reach these states where you build a new branch on the bus, and then you need all of the machines start at once, and you have to power them all, and your power system takes a hit. So once the bus actually gets built, it's easy to get into this kind of need power situation. But we should be plenty sufficient for now. Yeah, so as you can see, I don't remember if we've talked about this. So we've talked about hovering over the electricity pole. Have we talked about once you click on the electricity pole, you can get the electricity window? Have we talked about that yet?
I'm not sure if we have.
Okay, so basically, I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, but we'll kind of cover what you see here. You click on electric pole and you get this window with, it should be defaulted to 5 seconds, which is the width of these scrolling windows. And it depends on how familiar you are at looking at scrolling data windows, but this basically just shows you on the left what is taking all of your power. So as we can see, in the last 5 seconds, the electric mining drills, all 64 of them, so this is also a useful way to see how many of something you have. All 64 of our electric mining drills took 2.3 megawatts of power in these last 5 seconds. And on the right, we can see
the line on the graph.
Exactly. And then, it goes down with all the other things. The next most, power hungry thing are our assembling machines, and then the inserters, et cetera, et cetera. And on the right, you can see what we're producing. And it does get a little confusing sometimes. You'll see the production bar is full on the right, kind of in this right window area, but says 4 megawatts, which if you kind of go through and do the math, we have all of these steam engines. That doesn't make sense, right? A steam engine gives you, I think, 500 kilowatts times we now have 20 of them. That doesn't make sense, right? So when you're looking at your power, like how much power you have available, I should say, to use, it's a lot more easy to look on the upper left of this window where you look at the satisfaction bar, which is full, and that says at any moment, it tells you how much power you're drawing right now. So you can see we're hovering between 3.5 and maybe 4.0 megawatts at any instant of power. The production bar, that's where you can see kind of your power to go, your power reserve almost. And you can see we're down here maybe half, maybe, I don't know, a third-ish. That tells me all of that black space on that bar, that's extra power. It's not actually generating it right now because we don't need it, but as we add things that need power, the steam engines will work harder up to the point where that green bar fills up that entire space all the way up to the end. If we should have looked at this before, but when we were in a low power state, you would have seen the production bar all the way filled up with green. and then the satisfaction bar starting to do the little dips down into this kind of like jagged movement that happens. That would be happening on the satisfaction bar, representing the fact that we're not always getting 100% satisfaction. And then the last thing I'll cover is pretty much you can kind of zoom out on the grass with these little 5-second, 1 minute, 10-minute interval kind of buttons. And that can be, it's not super important, but it can be kind of cool to see, you know, how much power you can build, like a giant solar array or a bunch more boilers, and you can kind of zoom out and see how much that affects, even if it's not within your kind of 5-second window that you just did.
I took out of my own curiosity, I took a look at the map to see how our pollution has been building up. It looks like we're covering quite a big area now.
Yeah, it generally, once you start building, when you start building things that need a lot of power and then go and build a bunch of power, that is one of the main things that kind of spurs a pollution growth, because the assembling machines themselves don't necessarily take a ton of power or a ton of pollution, but the draw on your power system makes more pollution, and then your power system requires more fuel, and then your mining of fuel generates more pollution. So you can kind of see, if you look carefully, you'll notice the kind of darkest shades, or the least transparent shades of red, are all kind of around our power system and mining system, because that's really where the pollution is mostly sourced.
And also at the upper right corner of the pollution that we have the bright red dots, which are the biters, which I don't know we've really gone over because it's not really been a big factor in this gameplay. But if we were playing under normal mode, from what I understand, that pollution would be causing them to be aggressive at this point, correct?
Yes, at this point so they're kind of, I haven't been looking at it carefully, but you can see the kind of box which they are centered in is kind of flicking on and off. You know, it's like, it looks like it's not polluted, and then for a split second you get a little shade of red. They don't always attack in that kind of flickering state, but they may. And as soon as they're in kind of the full red of any kind of tint state, then yeah, they'll start building up their numbers and they'll start attacking. So at this point, again, if we weren't in peaceful mode right now, we would have to really start worrying about getting some turrets and defenses, and we'll cover all that stuff later. But for now, it's a good thing to note, but we conveniently don't have to worry about it at this time.
As a matter of fact, not having to worry about it, this is a good point to go ahead and put a cut in the video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is MouseGunner and Rotype signing out.